Hello, everybody. Welcome to the night group, where we talk about current events and hot topics in the news. We might accidentally educate you and entertain you at the same time, but who knows? So, welcome everyone on the panel. How have you been today?
Hello, Steve.
Glad to have you all here. We have Bob
Fantastic.
Taylor, and Dust James, Lamar Callahan, and myself, Steve Holder. I am your host. And we have several topics for discussion today, September the 3rd, 2023. The first thing on the agenda is Trump's Georgia election interference trial that will be televised and live streamed, judge decides. Donald Trump's trial for allegedly attempting to subvert the presidential election in Georgia will be televised and live streamed, a judge has decided. Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee announced on Thursday that he would allow all hearings and trials in the case to appear on a YouTube stream. The court will operate the stream. The judge will also allow full coverage for television, photography, and radio, he announced. The grand jury handed up 13 felony charges against Mr. Trump for his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election results in the state. These charges include RICO, conspiracy to commit forgery, filing false documents, solicitation of violation of oath by public officer, and more. In addition, 18 Trump associates have also been indicted, including former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Trump pleaded not guilty to the charges on 31 August and has asked a judge to sever his case from his co-defendants. So what do you think? Is it a good thing that the judge will allow the public to watch this live? What do you think?
I think
Yes.
100%.
I do too. I think it's really a good thing because we need to see that. I think we need to see it.
And if you're innocent, then you should have no problem.
Exactly.
If you're innocent of the charges,
Right.
you should have no problem to prove that.
Yeah.
So, but the burden of proof is on the prosecutor, and they have done their due diligence, and they've got more they have more evidence. It's ridiculous the amount of evidence they have.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah, I've always said as long as you have nothing to hide, there's no reason to worry about the truth coming out.
I think this is kind of odd for such a high profile case. I mean, I remember a lot of the times looking at cases, there'd be like artist renderings in the courtrooms, but yeah, I mean it makes sense. I'm not sure if Trump would want this to happen. I don't think it's going to make him look good. I think it's obvious that the thing I've been saying is just like how Trump's racism was more blatant, so was his corruption. He obviously broke the law several times in a very blatant way. And I don't know how this could backfire in some circles of, kind of encouraging his fanatical base. In other ways, that might be a downside, but I think it's overall positive.
Now, welcome, Angel.
Hey.
Glad you could join us.
Yes.
We are talking about the indictments in Georgia, the things that are going on down in Georgia with the indictments. Donald
Okay.
Trump's trial for allegedly attempted to subvert the presidential election. You've been keeping up with that?
A little bit. I did have a chance to read up on it a little bit. I have my thoughts on it, but
Now, go ahead, let's hear it.
yeah. I mean, I think it's a good thing. I think he's, good that he's finally being charged for those things that he's guilty of. I just hope that he's convicted of it and it's seen through.
Amen. It's so ridiculous in the long run that and if any of us did what he did on January 6th, on January 7th, we'd been in jail. We'd have been in an orange jumpsuit eating pudding. Okay, like that's
right.
the reality. That is the reality of the situation. Anybody else? No, but here we are 2-3 years later, and that MF is still sitting there, on his gold-plated toilet, getting away with murder, literally murder, because and it's infuriating that the legal system took this long. It's infuriating that what's his face? I can't even the Attorney General, the fuck is his name? Pardon my French.
Garland.
Merrick Garland took a
Merrick.
year. He took a year off of this case, didn't put any effort into it, and then got Jack Smith involved. And now all of a sudden, all the evidence is there, but he wasted an entire year not pursuing it. So anyway, sorry, I babble. It's just it's such a ridiculous thing. And I still do not understand the people that follow him. I just don't get it. I don't
either.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. And of all the things that he did during the 2016 campaign, many times I thought, well, now this will surely kill all of his publicity and his points. No, then after January the 6th, 2021, I said, anybody that follows this clown now, I can't see it. How can they? That's just me. So what do you think, Lamar?
Well, I've seen so many interviews with his followers, and they'll say, we know he's a liar, but he's just joking. And so when you look at this particular case, I think the evidence is more than clear, because they've caught him red-handed with his voice. All I need is X amount of votes. If because we're talking what's happening in Georgia. We're not talking about January 6th. But if you take January 6th, that's just, again, video recording of his voice, him speaking, the people saying we did it because Trump directed us to do it. So, front, back, left, sideways, up and down, Trump is guilty in so many directions. Mm-hmm. But let's be honest, he's innocent until proven guilty, and it's just a matter of time. Mm-hmm. But when you have outlets like Fox News and not Newsweek, Newsmax, who will spin it that it's a conspiracy. Yeah, not Newsmax. Is it Newsmax? I want to say Newsweek, but I believe it is Newsmax. Yeah, that will spin the news. It's going to be interesting, and I really would hope that someone would start off with, this man's a liar, and you can't trust what he says even when he's lying, and he's about as intelligent as a dumb fruit juice or a dumb grapefruit. Insult the crap out of him, that he will go to the point and say, I want to speak. And once he gets up on the stand, oh man, he's done, because multiple perjury.
Oh yeah,
you got him. You got him, front, back, left, and right.
But you know,
I'll let Trump go. I'll let other people go.
I want to speak on look at what he said coming out of after being arrested. He said he's like, oh, I contested the election. Oh, just like how the Democrats have contested the election. My party, the party I've been supporting, the Green Party, has also contested elections, but they did it through the correct legal hoops. They filled out the paperwork. They got the people to do what they were supposed to. Trump called up and at the very least told people do recounts on his behalf outside of the legal processes. I mean, it's so obviously what he's saying is ridiculous, and he doesn't even have an understanding of the law, the policies himself.
Yeah. So will everybody be watching this trial? I know I will.
I don't know if I can stomach watching him do anything, even if he sits there. I'd rather watch the recap afterwards so I don't have to be forced to the trauma that we have from dealing with this man as a nation. So I'd rather not even give him the screen time because he's just going to use it as ratings.
Is he going to be there?
He has to. It's
I
part of
thought
it.
I heard on the news where they allowed him not to be there.
He has to.
Go ahead. What was that, Lamar?
They said
No,
something
he has
on
to
the
be
news.
there for the.
He wouldn't have to be there himself.
He has to be there for
For the trial, not for the arraignment.
No, this is not a civil. No, he already for the arraignment. He did not have to be there. He turned him in last Thursday, or at least pled not guilty. That was Thursday of this past week. But for the trial, he has to sit there until the verdict is given.
Okay, well, good. That's good. Well, I'm looking forward to it myself. I don't think for a minute that he's going to spend 1 second in prison, no matter what they charge him with. I don't think that will happen. That would be justice, but I just don't think it will happen.
Not sure on that one. The jury is out, so to speak. I don't know if they're going to be able to. It depends on if they give him a house arrest or an ankle bracelet or something like that. But just like anything else, he's going to defy that anyway. So it's going to be the same. He will eventually either end up trying to skip the country. He will end up 6 feet under, or he will end up in jail, or they will do a house arrest and he just won't comply. So, it's he's up against a lot of charges. So, and he's got a lot of people that are flipping on him right now. So we don't know. But also, he's 77 years old.
Yeah. Well, he has a history of not complying. So
Of course.
Right.
Well,
But if he doesn't comply if he doesn't show up for court, then the marshals will show up for him, and the Secret Service will comply to pick him up. He's got no choice because the Secret Service will not whisk him away to another country. That's not going to happen.
Are you sure?
That's not going to happen. Trump is going to be, yeah. That's definitely. The Secret Service is not going to.
Some of them were complicit on January
the Secret
6th.
Service. Oh yes.
Does he have the same Secret Service that he's
to become an accomplice?
I don't know, Bob, if you got the same ones or not.
Well, that's what I was asking Lamar. I mean, Lamar,
He does.
what I'm thinking, if he has the same Secret Service that he had when he was in the White House, they already have testimony and text messages from the Proud Boys to his particular Secret Service. So if they were complicit then, they're complicit now. So if he wants to skip the country, it's just, it depends on the air traffic controller. Are they going to let the big jet out or not?
Yeah,
You know,
he's got the money. He knows about people. Yeah. So,
Yeah, but detail, his detail works for the Treasury Department, and there's no way on earth the Secret Service is going to break, is going to allow that to happen.
Mm.
And even and here's the deal: if Trump, if Trump won, whatever his airplane is called, was to leave U.S. airspace, my friends, the Air Force, would bring him back.
I hope you're
Plus,
right.
we got NATO. There's no way. Yeah, there's no way that Trump is going to be able to escape. There's no way.
Now, what does NATO have to do with
No
that,
way.
Lamar? Do you think they would intervene somehow?
Well, the thing is, if Trump was trying to escape, where's he going to go? He can't go to Ireland. What I'm saying is the other countries, he can't ask for asylum. The other countries would deny him. And he's not going to be able to get to Russia because he's got to travel through, NATO airspace. There's nowhere Trump can run.
I wish I was as confident of that as you are. I really do. A man has proven that he's got a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. No, there's no way he'd be. Yeah. Plus, he's too vain. He's still trying to think he can make it through and become president. He's too vain. And when you have these, yeah, well, there are people who want cold water in certain places too. But
yeah.
when you look at you currently have people in certain states that are talking about the 14th Amendment and him being not qualified to run in their state, because of the 14th Amendment, that he's going to be trying to fight that as well. Until that's settled and all these different court cases, he's not going to be running.
Well,
and if they really thought that he had a chance to run, they'd lock him down.
Yeah, they would have taken his passport. But I mean, the guy's gotten away with so much his entire life that I don't know. Like I would something that it's almost like, he's a master at playing chess. That's what people don't understand. He's a chess player. So he knows the point of chess is to anticipate your opposition's move, their next move. So he's like cuckoo, but in some ways he's got this weird way of being able to get out of jail free card,
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It is.
I just, and the thing is, I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist either, because in the grand scheme of things, yes, he can't he really can't escape the country. He really can't, X, Y, and Z, but I wouldn't put it past him to find a way.
Yeah.
He may mentally think he can find a way, but
I hope you're right. I'm like sitting here like, I'm gonna take that confidence that you have, Lamar, and I'm gonna believe it because I want to believe it so bad.
Yeah.
wanna
I just hope
see
there's
the
not
orange
like a
swimsuit.
like a mistrial or somebody. I hope they just
Yeah.
whoever is the prosecution has their duckies in a row. Like that, there's no way, there's no loophole.
Yeah.
91 felonies, 4 different cases,
Yeah.
and there's more to come because they haven't even released all of the co-conspirators in some of these cases. That's why we haven't seen Lindsey Graham up there. That's why we haven't seen Marjorie Trader Green or Matt Gaetz or any of the others that had a hand in all of this. So it's like we don't know who the other co-conspirators are at this point. Just the ones from Georgia right now.
My only thing is I just go back to Jeffrey Epstein.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
but there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
That's all I'm gonna say on that. If there's money can do some crazy things. I just hope they nail him. I hope they get
Yeah. But I also feel like, yes, a fish rots from the head, so you get rid of the head, and then the rest of the fish is supposed to be good. I don't know if that's going to happen. I think that he's opened up a can of worms to allow it to be okay to be racist again. It's okay to be, to take rights away from people and things like that. Like, so there's already a can of worms open, and yes, he's the culprit, but the followers and the people that the co-conspirators on all of this are still going to be there unless so it's like I just feel like it's this whole network, the spider web of just blatant evil personally. But yeah, he's the lead spider, but I feel like yeah, you get rid of him, big deal. There's 20 more behind him that are just as bad.
Yeah.
Rhonda Shitstain, he is just like this mini Trump in Florida, and yet he's running that state into the ground. And what did I do something
Yes,
wrong?
he is.
No. Yeah.
I'm in Florida.
Oh, so you like your governor? Nice guy.
Oh no! I love your description. That was great.
He's a mini Trump. He really is. He's a mini Trump. He just doesn't have people like him like the other one does. And it's funny because like when I was watching the Republican debate, I ended up liking Chris Christie, which I was like, what? He was the only one who was throwing barbs at Trump, and he was the only one who was handling it negatively. And he's the only one who's been, and that's the way he's trying to spin it, so that he gets into in favor. But it didn't work. It kind of backfired on him.
Yeah.
Right. Well, you're looking at a base that is for Trump.
Yeah.
So,
it's going to be a tough one. It really is.
But at least
year.
he's telling the truth, and he's right. The question I would love for somebody to ask is, would you consider Trump a role model for your child?
Not me.
That's the, I believe, if I remember correctly, that was asked by the those that were running before, and nobody answered the question. So I would love to see that question asked this time around and see if they answer the question. If they're so willing to say, I'm willing to back him, well, let's ask this question. Would you consider him a role model for your child?
I think there's a lot of his followers that would say yes. Sadly, but true.
Right. But the people who want to run for president, those who are running for president or running for vice president, who have the the stage, those are the ones I want to hear answer that question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, me too. Well, shall we move on to the next
See how many
topic?
people get that vote.
Let's see, the second topic we got is the sad reality of Australia's soon-to-be cashless society. Australia could be just years away from a cashless society, with disadvantaged and older Aussies expected to feel much of the burden. Sarah Wills, a finance and money commentator, has predicted Australia will ditch the banknotes and loose change in the next 3 to 5 years, with the country's move towards a fully cashless society essentially inevitable. We're very close to a cashless society. We can't stop it, she told news.com.au. Our phones and watches are becoming our first choice for purchases now. There aren't as many ATMs around anymore. Branches are closing down, and some retail shops can't break money. The move away from physical currency has been a long time coming, with cash accounting for just 13% of all payments made in 2022, compared to 27% in 2019, according to the Reserve Bank of Australia. RBA data also shows more than $1 billion worth of physical cash has disappeared from circulation in the last financial year. Wells said COVID-19 is one factor that has changed Aussies' attitudes toward cash use. During the pandemic, there was the fear around cash and the fact that people could get sick from it. There were a lot of changes that happened, she said. Then there's convenience. As Australians, we want to be able to buy online. We want to be able to transfer money quickly. We want to be able to not have to have cash on us. So I think there has been this push around convenience, particularly from consumers. So what percentage of your financial transactions are with cash? Angel, what percentage of your transactions are with cash? Looks like you have yourself muted.
I am at 0, so I don't think, very rarely will you see me with cash.
Would you be okay with that mandate here if it has to be that way?
I mean, it wouldn't hurt me, but because I'm always using the card. And that's just because I saw some things when I was in law enforcement that kind of shied me away from cash. I saw where people kept it. So early on, I shied away from the whole cash thing and just dealt with cards. So it wouldn't hurt me if it changed to that at all, really.
Okay. What do you think, Bobby?
It's weird because whenever you want to tip somebody, I don't like putting stuff on a credit card. So I would like to tip in cash so that I'm not adding, like, the cost of something is one thing, and I'd rather give somebody cash. Like, like I was at a restaurant or a bar last night, and I paid for my French fries, and I gave a cash tip because I put it on a credit card. So rather than put the tip on the credit card, you're paying interest on the tip. So I'd rather just give them the cash, and I'll pay the interest on the French fries, but I'd rather give the person physical money so that I'm not paying interest on that tip 10 years from now, or in some way. I try to keep the cards, a little bit.
I just want to make a quick clarification to Bobby's comment. In both Europe and Australia, where the labor movement's a lot stronger, they don't have a tip culture.
Oh no,
there isn't tips in Australia. They actually have living wages. So
amazing! Oh my God, who knew?
There's not a tip culture.
What a concept
in Australia.
No, but I mean, for me personally, I live in New York City. We are a tip economy when it comes to service industry. You know, like, but just in general, I feel like it's another way for them to add more cost to what I'm doing. You know, if I were taking it out of my debit card, then that's a different thing. But if I paid by a credit card, then I'm charged interest on the tip that I gave somebody. So it's almost like, you know, that, and where that's concerned, you know, that's where I would prefer not to have it. But if I pay someone with a debit card, then it's just cash coming out, and there's no interest or anything like that. There's no fee. It's, you know, but it's still like, I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a great idea because since the pandemic, I haven't used I haven't used cash that much at all. Um,
Yeah.
I was surprised I got paid for a gig in cash, and I was like, "Oh, what's this?" You know, and I was like, what do you mean? What do you you know?" And then you know, and then I did a performance last night, and somebody Venmoed me a tip, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's cool. I wasn't expecting that, but that's nice." You know, all of a sudden there's, you know, somebody sent me a tip, and I was like, "Oh, great." But it is weird that we're getting close to being cashless, but it still feels a little weird into how we are how that money gets exchanged. And every time you have a transaction, is it a transaction on your bank account, your credit card, and is somebody making more money off of your charge than they would if you were paying them in cash? That's my only like difference with that.
Now, my concern about going cashless is that if there was a screw up at the bank and they had a glitch in the system and it said I had zero money in my account, then what would I do? I'd be at the mercy of the bank to get that straightened out.
Right, and what if you're on vacation when that happens? Because
Exactly.
a lot of
Yeah.
times cyber crooks can get you when you're away. They usually strike when you're asleep. And if they do that and you wake up and you have no money in your bank account, what if you're in another country? What if, you know, like people follow if they follow your Instagram or your Facebook, and you say, "Oh, I'm off to Qatar," you know, wherever you're going, um, they're watching, you know. So it's just that part of it is a little spooky because I don't feel like it's hashed out enough. I still have, you know, I still have to watch my bank account like a hawk, watch for like a very small amount being charged. Like somebody from Kentucky charged 25 cents at Walmart
Oh,
on
wow.
my card. And I was like, no, I'm not in Kentucky, and I didn't buy anything for 25 cents. And yeah, sure enough, somebody got a hold of my credit card number. And luckily, though, when I check my statement to the number, because there's just too many crooks out there.
Interesting. 25 cents. Huh?
Yeah, they really ridiculously small amounts,
Yeah.
because they think you won't notice it in your bill.
Yeah. Or it might have been a test.
Yeah, they test it because if it goes through, then they'll hit you. You know, then they one time they took my card number, they hit it for 25 cents. I didn't grab it. I didn't snag it, and then they charged $3,000 at all Walmarts in Alabama until the card was declined, and then they stopped using it. But you know,
Yeah.
that's the thing that concerns me.
I probably have a little bit longer response to this subject, but I'd like to hear, if possible, I'd like to hear Lamar speak on it. Some of the stuff he was saying earlier first.
Go ahead, Lamar. What do you think about it?
Well, you know, Dust, you know, personally, I'm for a cashless society, and I simply because of, you know, I don't use cash, but I'm like Bobby as well, giving cash for tips because people live off of tips here in the U.S. But you know, we were talking earlier in terms of a new world order, and with a new world order, we're looking at having um, all the countries of the world united with a non-cash system, and then you're looking at very few people controlling our money, and that becomes again another power structure. So what Australia is doing, and this goes back to Bush 41. So it's not like this is something new, because Bush 41 was already talking about this. And if they're talking about it, how long ago earlier were they thinking about putting this together?
They've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah, I think Lamar raises some good points. When I think of the first Bush, the Bush before my time, and the New World Order, I think he's really talking about Western imperialism, Wall Street, London, Europe, and Western-based capital. I actually co-hosted a news show, with a comrade from Australia for over 3 years. And we would constantly talk about Australian politics. And he was a labor leader. And they have a strong labor movement in Australia. And they don't have any tip economy. Like I said earlier, they have living wages. Another interesting that Australia did that was progressive was their COVID zero policy. And they essentially adopted the Chinese policy. I don't think they adopted it as well as the Chinese. They're still a capitalist society. I would consider China more of a lower level socialist society that was actually able to test all of the people, and then they were able to do smaller, more humane lockdowns based on that testing data. So in China, they would shut down a whole block for a week or two. And then when the case subsided, they continued to test, and they'd actually bring in food to people. And then when the test subsided, they got rid of that lockdown. And the economy, actually the Chinese economy, was able to continue. And where is Australia? Australia is basically in the south eastern hemisphere. Right, they're very culturally influenced by China in a progressive way when it comes to their COVID policy. But also, let's look at China's monetary policy. In China, they have an app that everybody uses, and at a touch of a button, you can pay anybody you want to pay with zero transaction fees. This is and it's well regulated, and it's used for the public benefit. And if we compare, a socialist economic system where the banks are owned by the public and it's well regulated for the benefit of the people, it can have good results. But if you try to take that and put that power in the hand of the capitalists in the United States, where you have these crazy credit card companies that try to charge for everything, you got competing PayPal and this that are just looking at a way to sell your information to companies. I think it's not an issue of us being resisting the growing technology. It's about who's going to have control over that technology. And I think the Chinese are doing it in a good way. And I think there can be bad things about it here, but I don't think we should be Luddites. I mean, it's definitely more, if run correctly and done for the public benefit, sending cash at the touch of a button to anybody you want to is far more convenient. It's just the people got to be control over the mechanism that's doing it. And in the United States, I would fear we might lose, until we get an app that's well regulated. We could lose independent capitalists like the tamale lady, flea markets, all these cash run, lower level capital businesses that don't have that infrastructure might lose some business. But I think we should be pushing our government to have an app that's universal, well regulated, and benefits the people without benefiting the huge banks and corporations. And I think the Australians are just taking their cue from their neighbors in China. Like that's why they do the most trade with them. They're right next to them. Their financial systems are going that direction. That's the reason why Australia is the first one to do it. I know I said a lot, and that's going to open a can of worms, but y'all go ahead.
That would be good if it would work that way. It sounds good. But like you say, in America, everything's involved with the profit motive, and these big banks, they can't get enough profit. Guys like Bezos, Elon Musk, they can't get enough to suit them. And of course, all the banks are owned by the billionaires. So,
Right, and like I was saying, in the United States, we definitely probably, I don't know what we would do, but I have a feeling that because every transaction has a fee attached to it, that it would just be another way for capitalists to gouge money from the little guy, and that's just what that's where I think it's going. Unless there is, unless it was a regular, but I don't see that in our banking system. I don't see good people in our banking system. I don't see them saying, oh, there's no fee for this and no fee for that and blah, 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 blah. I don't see that. I see them saying, oh, we're going cashless. Okay, it's going to cost you 2% more per transaction. Oh, it's going to cost you X number of, it's going to cost you this for an Amazon transaction. I see them like padding their check every time we make a transaction. And with cash, you also, some people who get paid in cash don't have to report it for taxes. So some people do report all of it for taxes. Some people don't. And some people can survive with that little extra cushion because the government doesn't have their hand in it. But that's just that's why I'm a little resistant to it, because, government takes enough of our money. Banks take enough of our money. I don't see it as a good thing benefiting the little guy. I see it as a good thing benefiting the capitalist bankers, the billionaires of the world.
and they make the laws, they make the rules, and they control the money, they control the power. So, they basically do what they want to do. Well, let's go to the next topic. House GOP nears Joe Biden impeachment inquiry as McCarthy plans push. And lawmakers return to Capitol Hill after a summer break. One of the first orders of business among House Republicans could be pursuing an impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who has sought to tamp down talks of impeaching the president, gave his strongest indication Sunday he will pursue at least the first step in the impeachment process, calling it a natural step forward. The move to launch an impeachment inquiry comes amid allegations from Republicans on the House Oversight Committee that Biden's involvement in his family's business dealings were potentially improper or a threat to national security. It's a natural step forward that you would have to go to an impeachment inquiry, McCarthy said on Fox News Sunday Morning Futures. An inquiry, McCarthy said, would provide Congress the apex of legal power to get all the information they need. The White House, as conservative lawmakers have been clamoring to begin impeachment proceedings against Biden since Republicans took control of the House in January. And Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who introduced a resolution to impeach Biden when he took office in 2021, said in an interview Tuesday she is ready for the party to launch the inquiry. So what do you think? Should Biden be impeached? And if so, why? What do you think, Dustin?
Well,
Cricket.
I think there's a lot to impeach Biden on. but I don't think these right-wing nut jobs are going to impeach him for the real reasons. Like, I don't think we should be sending the money to Ukraine. I don't think we should be continuing bombing countries in the Middle East. I don't think we should give any money to the genocidal war against the people of Yemen. I think we should take all troops out of Africa immediately and let the African continent have independence and prosperous without the U.S. meddling in their country. I think Joe Biden's promise to um, veto Medicare for all is basically a death sentence for over 60,000 Americans who die without health care. Yeah, I have a lot of problems with Joe Biden from the left, but this Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is borderline proto-fascist, is going to just, you know, I don't think they're going to do it for the correct reasons at all, and I probably won't be behind their version of the impeachment. But I would like to see more accountability for the imperialist duopoly generally.
Yeah. You think Marjorie Taylor Greene is just a troublemaker, or does she actually serve a purpose?
I think she is the definition of the right, the reaction. If you notice, she actually says some good things. Like she'll say, well, why is the money going to Ukraine instead of baby health care or instead of baby formula? And that's a good thing to say. But who does she blame, though? Does she blame capitalism? Does she blame the banks? Well, maybe they'll be like, oh, the elites and the globalists or what have you. But does she actually blame the companies that are causing malnutrition and giving us inferior food, or the capitalist system? No, she blames migrants. She blames minorities. She blames the most hardest working and hardest and exploited people in our society. And that's what fascists and reactionaries do. They take some legitimate economic concerns of the middle class and they say the problem is the people worse off than you. And they get the working class to fight amongst each other.
Yeah. Lamar, what do you think?
I personally don't see anything for him to be impeached on. I mean, this is not a person who has spoken against the government. This is not a person who has aligned himself with an enemy. This is not a person who has I don't see anything that he's done wrong. I'm not trying to say I'm, a Joe Biden fan. I have my issues with him, but I just don't see anything rising to the point of impeachment. But then again, I don't say that he's evil just because he's a Democrat, and I'm an independent. But, I don't come from a Marjorie Taylor Greene standpoint.
Well, Angel, what do you think? You're muted, by the way.
I see. I kind of side with Lamar on this one. I do have my issues with Biden. I do, but I don't necessarily think he should be reprimanded for the actions of his son. But I'm siding with the side of Lamar. I don't see where he's done something that's outright. And then to piggyback off of, is it Dustin? I think Dustin or
Dust. I go by Dust.
Yeah. Okay. I want to make sure I was saying that right. I do a lot of work in Africa, and I see where you're saying where we're not needed, but then at some point, just hearing the concerns and the things that are going on over there, we pour a lot of money over there, and their government just they twist everything around, and they don't put it on its purpose. It goes into the political leaders' pockets. It's really, really bad. So I see where we could step in and help with some control, because the people themselves, the people in the communities, they are begging for some help to turn things around, especially with government and everything like that, and military. But I haven't seen where he's done something that's like he's got to come out of the White House. Do I feel like he's getting old and his time is just it's time to probably wrap it up? Yeah, but I'm not seeing where he's done something where he needs to be impeached necessarily.
Yeah, I agree. My problem with Biden is sending all the money to Ukraine. That's ridiculous. But yeah, I don't think he's done anything worth impeaching him over. Bobby, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I think it's just it's a tactic that the Republicans are using to get back at the Democrats for, getting their leader, or all the the stuff that they're doing against Donald Trump. So that, we're their golden idol. Apparently it's their way to get back at him, back at us. I agree with Lamar that I don't see anything that he's done, but that doesn't. Now, here's the thing: all politicians, I can't. As soon as somebody says they're in politics, listen carefully, because you can't always believe what they say. You can't believe what they can't always believe what they do, and there's a lot of stuff that's underneath the surface that we don't see as a general public. Have I seen anything that he's done that he should be impeached on? I don't see that. I definitely agree with you, Dust and Angel, that the money needs to go. Why are we sending money all over the place? We have a homeless crisis in our own country, and we're sending money elsewhere. I agree with that. It's like, but I feel like it's just that this is just their way of, I'm getting back at you for what you did to my leader, that kind of thing. But I also feel I'm not a Joe Biden fan. He wasn't even in my top 10 when we were trying to find a person who was going to be the Democratic nominee. So I'm not a fan, but I'm glad he knocked Bloaty McShitstick out of the race, and I'm glad he's our president now. But I worry, it's time to put, Grandpa, it's time to step down. Let somebody, we need a younger government in this country. There are too many old white men in charge. We need a younger, more diverse government. We need people in place who are not going to be, who just aren't assholes, and that are not going to be pulling this stupid stuff. I mean, it's like, it's going to waste so much financial resources to do this impeachment, which is a sham. Here's my other thing. If they have evidence and he committed a crime and they have evidence and can prove it in court, then by all means, book him, lock him up. I don't care. I'm not in a cult. I don't worship Joe Biden. I do, however, want my government back. I want normalcy back. I want my taxes lowered. I want inflation to come back down. There are things that I really want from my president that Grandpa Joe is just not going to be able to pull it off. So who's ever in line behind him, I want someone younger to succeed. I want someone in that, I want to get away from old government and these life appointments. We're living through the chess match between the Democrats and the Republicans. We're in that chess match, and no offense to the Independents or Green Party or anything like that, but we're in the midst of their argument because they can't get along, so they're fighting back and forth. But then we are all, as a nation, feeling the effect of a conservative Supreme Court, of the corruption that is in all of our politics. And like they're talking about Hunter Biden is a U.S. citizen. He's not in a position of power. He's not an elected official. However, if you go to Bloaty McShitstick, his family, they were all in positions of power. in his cabinet. His daughter, his sons, they all had positions. His son-in-law. So if they did something wrong on the federal level, they need to be held accountable. Hunter is not an elected official. They're only going after him because they can. And because, yeah, if he did something wrong, and he probably did, then book him. I don't care. I'm not in a cult. I don't give a shit about him. Get the evidence, put him in court, put him in jail if he broke the law. I don't care. But to go waste resources on this when they probably don't have any evidence, or depending on what they're, what matters is the grounds. Like, what grounds is this impeachment based on? So they're going to have to come up with X, Y, and Z. So if X, Y, and Z is actually breaking the law, then yeah, impeach him, get rid of him. But I don't like this. Well, this backlash of, well, you did it to Trump, so we're going to do it to your guy. That's what I feel like it is. I feel it's this childish, ridiculous waste of resources.
And that's exactly what's happening. You're right. They
I don't
are
think
just getting back at what the Democrats are doing to him. The witch hunt, he keeps calling it. So he's always the victim. Trump is always a victim in his eyes.
He's a sociopath and a narcissist. If you Google narcissism, look at all of this. I've dealt with narcissists my entire life, and they are evil to the core, but they are also they are damaged human beings. He's a mentally ill person.
Yeah.
He should not be in a position of power. Sorry.
I don't think you could have said it any better, Bobby. That was very well put.
Well, thank you.
All my thoughts in one.
But he swears he's a stable genius, Bobby.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to respond quickly to Angela.
Okay,
I really liked some of her comments. I just think I have a lot less faith in the imperialist American system. I don't think the same government and force that shoots down poor people and black and brown people in the streets is helping the people of Africa. If we look at their actions in 2011, there was a NATO bombing, which the president approved of, mostly on behalf of the French imperialists, but they destroyed the most prosperous nation in Africa. Gaddafi was helping invest all over in Africa. And the reason why they didn't like Gaddafi investing all over Africa is because they want to keep Africa poor and underdeveloped so they can continue to exploit and take resources from them. And I think if the U.S. was to stop carrying out coups and stop backing up those corrupt dictators you described, then Africa could be a more free and prosperous place.
That's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen, Dust. Amen, Dust.
Well, let's look
Amen.
at the next item. Guantanamo military judge rules against evidence derived from torture. An exceptional legal ruling issued from the depths of America's secretive apparatus of military tribunals has thrown a wrench into the latest government efforts to whitewash the notorious CIA torture program. This ruling and the depraved and sadistic war crimes that it once again brings to light underscore the hypocrisy which the U.S. government now claims to be defending human rights and the so-called rules-based international order of Rome. The ruling in question is a 50-page pre-trial decision issued August 18 by Army Colonel Lanny J. Acosta Jr. in favor of Guantanamo Bay prisoner Abd al-Rahim al-Shiri, who allegedly played a role in the October 2000 bombing of the USS Cole in Yemen. Al-Shiri, who has been in prison for 2 decades without trial, is currently being prosecuted in the secretive pseudo-legal apparatus of military tribunals that was established as part of the War on Terror and about which many Americans to this day remain unaware. Under this framework, if a person is arrested and prosecuted as a vaguely defined enemy combatant, the judge, the prosecutors, and even the jury all consist of military officers. The lopsided procedural rules are designed to favor prosecutors with every conceivable advantage. The U.S. asserts the power to prosecute citizens of any country under this system, including U.S. citizens. Those found guilty can be sentenced to death and executed. After being abducted by the CIA in Dubois in 2002 without charges or trial, al-Nashiri was one of numerous victims subjected to extensive and systematic torture at Guantanamo Bay and at secret CIA dungeons known as black sites. Located around the world, he was repeatedly sexually assaulted by American torturers in a perverted and sadistic practice known as rectal feeding. The depravity of al-Nashiri's torture exceeds the most depraved of the depraved films in the horror film genre. It is all the more horrifying because it really happened, and at the direction and with the approval of the highest levels of the U.S. government. In an effort to extract a confession, American torturers operated a power drill next to al-Nashiri's blindfolded head and told him they were going to drill into his skull. They told him that they would bring his mother into the torture chamber and force him to watch them rape her. They strapped him into excruciating stress positions, reminiscent of the Catholic Inquisition, and crammed his body into a small box. He was waterboarded repeatedly and subjected to meticulous and protracted sleep deprivation. And this is only part of what happened to this man. So is this treatment of prisoners acceptable to anybody?
No, never.
I agree. I agree.
100% no.
Not to me.
Yeah. I
Not
can't
to
imagine
me.
why anybody would be okay with that.
It goes back to the
But then-
the witch trials where the Christian Christian what was it, the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition, where they're forcing a confession just for the sake of getting a confession. If you're being tortured, you're going to say whatever you want to stop the torture. So
For sure.
No.
So
To me,
Do you
this
think-
goes back to a people that would go to another country. I'm sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
I was just going to say there's nothing that anybody says under torture, like was just mentioned, is going to be telling the truth necessarily. They're going to say whatever they need to say to stop the pain, stop the torture. I would. Anybody in their right mind, we can only take so much pain. And we're going to do whatever it takes to get out of that pain. No strings attached. We will do anything and everything to get out of it. I mean, that's just a fact. So go ahead, Lamar. What are you going to say?
Well, I think that's why the judge is saying anything that is derived from torture is thrown out, because you're going to say anything to stop the torture. But to do the torturing, I think that comes from the mindset of let's go to another country and let's give the people smallpox. And we're going to take their land and kill the people and say it's our land now. let's go ahead and grab people from another country and bring them here on boats, and then say that we're giving them skills to survive, and then we're going to deny them education. That's the type of mindset I see this as. But I do see that the U.S. Uniform Code of Military Justice is a much better legal system, which I wish Trump was being used against, since he was the commander in chief. But no, torture is not a good system, unless it's me and my brother trying to get the last chocolate cake.
Yeah. I was like, hey, whatever you're into, No, but it just goes back. It's this archaic belief that sorry. It's this archaic belief that there is, like, in order you have to torture somebody to get an answer from them. It's almost like they're never going to give you that. They're only going to give you the answer that stops the torture. So,
Exactly.
I want to echo off what Brother Lamar said. And yeah, this country was founded on genocide and slavery, and has been at war for the vast majority of its existence. If we look at the island of Cuba, where Guantanamo is, before the socialist revolution, it was run by a horrible dictator, and it was run as a casino and a resort for Americans as the people lived in destitute poverty. I think Guantanamo should be returned to the Cuban people. And the prisoners from Guantanamo come from the Bush War, where the United States, on false evidence, invaded a country that had nothing to do with 9/11. And then you think their reason for the war was completely wrong from the hype around terrorism. They're gonna systematically look for people that can actually give them things. They picked up random people. There's innocent people in Guantanamo who've been tortured with our tax dollars for decades. And I think they should be given an apology, and I think they should be given reparations to an extent. Yeah, I think this is all the way around a disaster.
So do you think the whole idea
Did
of
somebody say reparations?
detained without
Yeah.
trial, do you think
Yeah.
that-
That and more. I'm for
I'm
both.
joking, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
No, I'm joking,
Brother
because
Steve.
there's certain people that don't get reparations. Every other culture does.
Yeah. No, I'm in favor of former slaves getting reparations, and whoever's been harmed in a provable way, and that's descendants of slaves and those tortured in Guantanamo alike.
Well, let's see what's next on the agenda.
You know,
Escaped convicts still at large outside Philadelphia. Hundreds of law enforcement officers were scouring the railways, creeks, and roads in a suburban county near Philadelphia on Saturday, looking for a man who escaped from prison a little over 2 weeks after being convicted of first-degree murder. The authorities said on Friday that local, state, and federal officials were using helicopters, drones, and dogs to find the convicted murderer, Danilo Cavalcante, who escaped from Chester County Prison on Thursday. He was last seen a little before 10 a.m. that morning by someone going to work at the prison, walking south and wearing a white t-shirt, gray shorts, and white sneakers. We believe that he is still in the general area, said Deborah Ryan, the Chester County District Attorney, at the Friday news conference. We believe that he is hiding somewhere locally and that he is alone. On Saturday morning, the district attorney's office said that Mr. Cavalcante was observed on a residential surveillance camera at about 12:30 a.m. Saturday on the Lake Road, approximately 1.5 miles from the prison. He was wearing pants, a light-colored T-shirt, and white sneakers. His appearance has remained unchanged, the officer said on the Facebook page, adding that he was wearing a backpack. The statement also said that the police received a report of an attempted burglary at 12:30 p.m. in Compton Township, a little over 2 miles from the prison, though it did not definitively say there was a connection. Ms. Ryan said on Friday that people in the area needed to be on high alert as Labor Day weekend commenced, suggesting that they lock their doors and keep watch over their children. We have every reason to believe he is considered dangerous at this time, she said. And my question is, how was he allowed to escape? I mean, were the prison guards in on it in some way, you think? Was it an inside job? Did somebody get paid off? What do you think?
I would say it's more than likely just incompetency. I think a lot of there's they would be able to keep the people off the street they needed to if there wasn't masses of people in jail who didn't need to be there. If we had better education, if there was less, if it was more um, places for drug users to go seek help. Um, and there was more opportunities, there'd be a lot of people that wouldn't need to be in jail. If we would address the other social ills, we wouldn't need to be spending so much on locking up people who have no reason to be locked up, and they'd be able to spend that money on keeping people who need to be there.
Yeah, and a lot of prisoners are short-handed nowadays. A lot of them. It would be a very thankless job, a very dangerous job. I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want it. Angel, what do you think?
Right.
I mean, I think that like what piggybacking off what this was saying, there's a lot of understaffed. They're understaffed. They're working all these overtime hours. These guards are exhausted. We have it here where I'm located in Alabama, where it's real bad, and so this causes a lack of oversight, and things evidently are going to slip through the cracks, and then it's just going to turn. It's going to be a ripple effect. I mean, we just had one inmate in a prison here who got a hold of the officer's gun, firearm, and vest. So, and then held all the guards hostage. So, I mean, it can happen.
Yeah. What do you think, Bobby?
This is always a tough one, just because, I live in New York. I live maybe 1 mile from Rikers Island, which is the biggest jail in New York area. It's terrifying when people get out of jail. If somebody's like a hardened criminal, especially someone who's got a murder conviction. That's first of all, like you said, I don't know if is this was it an inside job? Did somebody just forget to lock the door? Something like that. Prisoners don't just walk out. So somehow, like, I don't know the system, but it's it's like something's missing in the story of how this person got out. But either way, it's just terrifying. It's terrifying to know that a person like that is on the street, that that they could do this again, they could hurt more people, and it's just a scary prospect.
Yeah. Lamar?
I'm agreeing with Bobby. I would like to know who's actually responsible. Who do you hold accountable for this? which guard is it? Uh, whose job was it to secure him in the cage? Essentially, that's what it is.
Yeah.
In the cell. No matter how you call it, it's a cage. And whose job was it? And then what do you do? Like Dustin said earlier about incompetency or competency. When you listen to what Angel mentioned about a convict grabbing the gun and the vest of an officer, is that incompetence? So who's accountable, and what do you do when the ball is dropped?
Yeah.
I just hope that no one else is killed because of what this person or may do. I hope they catch him quickly.
I hope so. I hope so.
On that note, I got to bounce, guys. So thank you for having me, and I got to get going. But I'll see you again on the flip side, Steve, and everybody. Nice to meet you all. But I do have to have to head out.
Same, Bobby.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for joining us, Bobby.
Nice
Well,
meeting you, Bobby. Hope to see you again.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Okay.
Was that the fifth, the final point thing to discuss?
No.
Okay.
Here's one. Why do we celebrate Labor Day?
Okay.
Now, if you need to run, Dust, I understand.
No, I was just wondering. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the criminal justice system
Okay, go ahead.
and the way it's. I mean, what is the purpose of the prison system, the jails, the police? They say it's to keep us safe, but if you look at the 13th Amendment, how you're free until you're criminalized, and then you have classist judges, racist judges that will criminalize working class Black and brown communities. And it makes you really, and then they're letting people go that are murderers. Like, what is their real deal? Are they actually trying to keep us safe, or is the jail system there just to maintain class and racial exploitation? It makes you things like this make you think about it.
Yeah. Didn't the police actually get formed in USA to retrieve slaves that escaped? Or that kind of a big thing for policemen? Seems like I remember reading something about that in a history book.
Yeah, well, the origin of the police was to find runaway slaves.
Yeah.
To
So in a sense,
protect the person's property, which was to
the landowners, the plantation owners, the people with the money, the
yes.
rich old black guys.
Yeah. So, the story continues.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at the next one. Why do we celebrate Labor Day? Labor Day, an annual celebration of workers and their achievements, originated during one of American labor history's most dismal chapters. In the late 1800s, at the height of the Industrial Revolution in the United States, the average American worked 12-hour days and 7-day weeks in order to eke out a basic living. Despite restrictions in some states, children as young as 5 or 6 toiled in mills, factories, and mines across the country, earning a fraction of their adult counterparts' wages. People of all ages, particularly the very poor and recent immigrants, often faced extremely unsafe working conditions. with insufficient access to fresh air, sanitary facilities, and breaks. As manufacturing increasingly supplanted agriculture as the wellspring of American employment, labor unions, which had first appeared in the late 18th century, grew more prominent and vocal. They began organizing strikes and rallies to protest poor conditions and compel employers to renegotiate hours and pay. Many of these events turned violent during this period, including the infamous Haymarket Riot of 1886, in which several Chicago policemen and workers were killed. Others gave rise to long-standing traditions. On September 5, 1882, 10,000 workers took unpaid time off to march from City Hall to Union Square in New York City, holding the first Labor Day parade in U.S. history. The idea of a working men's holiday celebrated on the first Monday in September caught on in other industrial centers around the country, and many states passed legislation recognizing that Congress would not legalize the holiday until 12 years later. When a watershed moment in American labor history brought workers' rights squarely into the public's view, on May 11, 1894, employees of the Pullman Palace Car Company in Chicago went on strike to protest wage cuts and the firing of union representatives. On June 26, the American Railroad Union, led by Eugene B. Debs, called for a boycott of all Pullman railway cars, crippling railroad traffic nationwide. To break the Pullman strike, the federal government dispatched troops to Chicago, unleashing a wave of riots that resulted in the deaths of more than a dozen workers. And as we know, there's still many people still working in unsafe conditions. Many politicians in the past and present do all they can to undermine labor unions and workers' rights. So what do you think about that, Lamar?
Well, I'm glad that we have Labor Day. I'm glad that we have workers' rights. I read early this morning that let's see how it went. I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was on the Hill newspaper or web paper that school districts are now going to a 4-day week. That's in benefit of both the teachers and the well-being of the students. Details need to be worked out, but as far as Labor Day, workers need to be recognized, and it's been a long road. It's been a long, bloody road to get to this point, and we do have un I don't want to say unconscious, but we do have companies that do not look for the benefits of its employees. Um, Starbucks that do not look for the benefits of their employees. We do need unions. We do need to look after our employees, and we do need a living wage. What that actually is, I can't say. I know that what works in New York may not work in Tennessee because of the living wage. It's different. To say 15 here, 12 here. But workers do need to have a living wage. They do need to have safe working conditions. And whether you are a U.S. citizen or an immigrant or I shouldn't say immigrant, but a a person working in the United States should have safe working conditions. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any way you could bring back up the article? There was actually a few points of bias I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
First of all, well, Eugene E. Debs was the leader of the Socialist Party in the United States, who led the unions. And a lot of the early labor movement was led by socialists, communists, and anarchists. And the IWW, which was a huge labor union, anarcho-socialist, was an inspiration. The way they helped so many people fight against unfair bosses is there's so much history of struggle. The big thing of contention and bias I'd like to point out is that the Haymarket riot. I think they were anarchists, they were immigrants, and they were organizers. And I believe they were falsely accused by the government and murdered to attack the labor movement. I think they were an anarchist threw bombs. I don't think it just happened to be the people who were leading the fight for the 8-hour day. I think they were murdered. And actually, everywhere else in the world, Labor Day is celebrated on May 1st, not in September. And it's funny, the Haymarket riot is the reason it's celebrated on May 1st. And the reason why we don't celebrate it in the United States is because of anti-communism, because the Soviet Union and China and Cuba honored the socialists in the United States. They helped spearhead the global labor movement, gave honor to them. And then the anti-communism wanted to separate the U.S. labor movement from the socialist countries, and they changed it to September. And if you look all the way back in 2006, the masses of immigrant workers who I think the Bush regime was trying to make it where if you helped an undocumented worker, it was a felony. And they took a mass strike in 2006 and awakened the masses of underpaid immigrant workers returning May Day to the home of its origin. And you can't say enough about the labor movement and what it does for everyday working people. If you have a union, you're more likely to make the average wage $16 or more, which is more than almost twice the average wage, at least with a few years back before inflation. So you're more likely to have double the wage, better health care, and they tell you the union's a bad thing. Who's telling you? The people that have to pay it, you know? And if you got the weekend came from the labor movement. Healthcare came from the labor movement. If you look at the unions that still exist, even if you don't have a union, the fact that there's a union within that industry is lifting up wages in that entire industry. And I think we need more democratic unions. We need more people involved. And that's the only way working people are going to get better wages is if they fight for it. I don't think we're going to be able to vote our way out of this. We need stronger unions and civic participation across the board.
Yeah, as long as the union leaders are credible.
Yeah, we need more democratic insurgent unions. A lot of them are bought off.
Yeah.
And to change that, it's going to take union membership forcing out corrupt leadership, which takes involvement, not just showing up at the union meeting. And
Yeah. I think there's more rank and file membership rising up now than what we have been in the past. I certainly hope so. Because a lot of the union leaders are paid off also. And that's really sad. And people really tick me off. Okay, let's go to a woman that gives birth alone in a Tennessee jail cell. A woman gave birth alone in a jail cell in Tennessee on Tuesday after seeking medical attention for more than an hour, the authorities said, raising questions about the care provided to the woman and her baby. The episode highlights issues about the incarceration of women and drew criticism from prison reform advocates who have raised concerns about pregnant women in prisons or jails being ignored and put at risk. The woman, whose name has not been made public, was incarcerated at the Montgomery County Jail in Clarksville, Tennessee, about 50 miles northwest of Nashville. When she notified a deputy at 11:31 a.m. about a medical concern, according to the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. A nurse arrived a few minutes later, the sheriff's office said. The nurse assessed the woman and then left to consult with other medical staff members. Another nurse arrived at 11:54 a.m. to conduct a follow-up assessment, according to the sheriff's office. The medical staff members left to continue to assess the situation and order additional medical tests, the sheriff's office said. However, at 12:41 p.m., a deputy went to the cell and discovered that the inmate had given birth while in her cell, the sheriff's office said. The deputy helped the woman while medical staff members were alerted. The woman and her baby were taken to a hospital where they remained in stable condition and under hospital care as of Tuesday, the sheriff's office said. It was unclear why the woman was not taken to a hospital before she gave birth. And the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, which operates the jail, did not immediately respond to calls seeking comment on Saturday. So, do y'all think this woman got the care she deserved?
Is there any way we could hear from Angela first?
No way. No way.
What do you think, Angel?
So I used to work for the executive team of a prison I shall not name for this reason. I've never seen a lack of experience among the medical staff until I entered into this particular facility. Just doing my research once I came in, because a lot of the inmates, I handle in their sexual assaults, any sexual assault that took place within the facility. I was responsible for investigating it and getting to the bottom of it. Well, people started coming to me, a lot of inmates with different complaints, and this was one of them. They were complaining of their legs being experimented on, by the physician, all kind of stuff. So when I went to research the physician, I found out that he actually had his license revoked for constantly being the influence of drugs and alcohol and things like that. So the fact that he would come in and he'd be like, hey, let's try this and let's see if this worked. And it pretty much started eating at the lady's leg. He was supposed to be treated for something, but he just decided to experiment, and then it went left. It was bad. It was a lot of bad stuff going on. And I was like, well, how did he get in here? And I'm like, well, maybe it's because they can't get anybody else to come into these facilities. Top of the line doctor is not coming into a prison. And so they get what they can get. And I'm not sure how that works, but I've heard other prisons have the same issues as well. And that's just one thing I just can't, I can't understand. I thought it was sickening. But I'm just not understanding how he was able to be in his role. And I mean, he was destroying people left and right. And that was okay. So do I think that her care was accurate, was appropriate? No, it shouldn't have been that way at all. She should have been taken immediately to the hospital in this case. Can I see why this happened? Yes, because I've been on the inside and I see. So yes, I can totally see how this happened, but just the fact that it's happening is sickening, and that's just, like I said, a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Yeah. What do you think, Lamar?
I agree with Angel all the way. I think it's sickening.
Yeah, it definitely is.
I want to apologize for saying your name wrong earlier. I said Angela. It's Angel. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're
Um,
fine.
yeah. No, I figured you'd have a wealth of experience seeing that you've
Mhm,
been around and in the situation,
mhm.
and it's just a travesty the way that prisoners are treated. If we look at the prison jobs and how people are paid $1 an hour to do jobs that people should be getting paid $20 an hour plus, level of exploitation, and like I said earlier, the unfair criminal court system that if you're poor, no matter what race, you're more likely to be convicted. If you're poor and
Yeah.
black and brown, you're really likely to be convicted, and then people with lawyers can just get off of it. And then the stigma against people, oh, that's a criminal. We don't have to give them decent food like a human being or decent medical treatment. And it's a sad thing. And most of the people don't even have to be there. If we had drug rehabilitation centers, career opportunities where people weren't forced into the underground economy, better education. I don't think a lot of, and we had, instead of having retribution and mandatory sentences, we would actually look at the person and try to rehabilitate that person. I don't think it'd be overcrowded like it is now.
I agree too, and I think that a lot of our prisons are becoming overcrowded with like mental health. You know,
Mm.
we don't have any mental health facilities, like we used to. So it's like they're all being crammed into the prisons, and they're just not getting any help at all. It's really sad.
It is definitely a sad situation. Well, let's look at the next topic. One critically injured in overnight shooting in East Nashville. At least one person was critically injured in a shooting that occurred overnight in East Nashville. The shooting happened just after 3:30 a.m. in the 500 block of Summer Place on Sunday, September 3rd. Authorities reported that one person sustained critical injuries in the shooting. The motive for the shooting remains unknown. Metro Police said a suspect has not been taken into custody. The shooting remains under investigation. No other information was immediately released. East Nashville has a quirky vibe and a buzzing food and nightlife scene. The Five Points area is known for its street art, upbeat bars, and trendy fine dining restaurants. Um, do you think because we see so many freak shootings in America, it's always in the news, you think we're desensitized to it, like it's nothing newsworthy anymore? You ever feel like that?
True.
Yeah.
Maybe to
I
some
remember,
people.
yeah. Well, I remember a time when one person got murdered. It was on the front page, you know. And now that's no big deal. Now it's kill 50 or 100 or something like that, then it makes the headline news around the country. But otherwise, it's no big deal.
I think also there's a huge underreporting with law enforcement agencies. So I think if they actually reported what was actually taking place and what actually happened, um, there will be a whole lot more alarm. You hear a shooting here, you hear a shooting there, you go, oh, it's Chicago, what's new? But if they were actually reporting all that really was taking place, I think people will be running for the mills to get out of here because there's a whole lot that goes on that's never reported, and it's just like the major things or something that's spikes interest or maybe outside of the norm or a different kind of shooting or a mass shooting or things like that. But there is a lot of underreporting that goes on with law enforcement, and it's purposely done to make the communities feel safer than what it actually is, if that makes sense.
You think maybe they're afraid of public panic?
Yes.
Angel.
Yeah.
Angel, when you talk about underreporting, are you talking about the cops that beat up people and their friends don't report their fellow cops beating up people? Is that the underreporting you're talking about?
Yes, some of that, and then also when it comes to like, just let's take Montgomery, Alabama, for example, or even Pensacola, Florida. There's a lot of, these are areas that I've worked in, and there's a lot of underreporting when it comes to, you'll see one or two shootings that may have happened the night before when there's actually like 7 or 8. Or you'll see one girl that was raped, and she was raped by a serial killer, but in actual reality, 37 people were raped that same day. You know, it's just they're not reporting the accurate numbers. So, and again, it's for, you know, not to raise as much alarm and to make everybody feel as though law enforcement is doing something to keep them safe when it's actually like super chaotic. I know I saw way more that was happening or that I was dealing with on a day-to-day basis than what was actually reported on our local news, for sure.
Yeah, no doubt.
I think Angel talked about the lack of mental health services earlier, as far as people in the prison system, they don't have any health services. That also contributes to these shootings. I think another thing that needs to be talked about, we don't have these types of shootings in the other industrialized countries nearly at the same rate, and it's because of common sense, universally enforced gun regulations. And our kids are being shot in the schools. Like, it's ridiculous that we like let the weapons manufacturers, the extremists in the NRA, to control our policy to the point where we live in a dysfunctional state, a non-functioning state that can't do the basic thing of keeping us safe and basic public safety. I think we need, like, a lot, even the gun, when they have gun regulations, they usually take guns away from poor black and brown people, but like crazy rich, mostly white people, they can have all the guns they want. And so, you know, it's completely done. It needs to be universally enforced.
And you're
And they,
absolutely right,
yeah.
because when Crime Stoppers comes in and they do like their little events and stuff in the area, they're coming, they go straight to that community to have their turn in your gun event. It's not in on the other side of town. It's not in other places. They go straight to those high, you know, the very urban areas. They're primarily of color, and they will host those events. So I feel you there.
Yeah. And that's nothing new, is it? It's been going on forever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
But you know, when they talk about things like human trafficking is way, I mean, if you dive into it and you know enough and you get enough knowledge, you will be shocked by what is actually going on and taking place. But you hear about a little event here, a little event there, a little event here, but it's happening every single day in front of your face, and nobody, it's so normalized that people don't even realize it's even happening.
yeah.
If people knew the rate at which it was happening, I mean, everything would shift.
Yeah.
Quick.
Yeah, like I mentioned before, Rachel, that in East Tennessee, there is an epidemic of parents selling or trading their kids to sex traffickers in order to pay off, or in some cases, drug dealers to pay off a debt or to make money You know, there's an epidemic of it. I mean, that's sad. I mean, like you say, it's happening all the time. It's not new.
Yep.
And that is sad.
My phone, I don't have my phone hooked in. It's at 4%, so it might cut off soon. So
Okay. I understand. Well, let's look about the Burning Man Festival. I say you probably heard about this. Thousands are stranded at the Burning Man Festival after heavy rains. Officials say over 70,000 people are stranded in the Nevada desert after heavy rains swamped the annual Burning Man Festival, leaving thick, ankle-deep mud. Attendees were told to shelter in place in the Black Rock Desert and conserve food, water, and fuel, but some have chosen to hike out of the desert. Officials have halted all traffic in and out of the festival, aside from emergency vehicles. The remote event site in northwest Nevada was hit with 2 to 3 months worth of rain in just 24 hours, from Friday to Saturday morning, and more was anticipated Sunday afternoon. Authorities are investigating a death which occurred during this rain event. According to the sheriff's office, though it is unclear if the death was related to the storms. Authorities did not publicly name the person or provide details on the circumstances of the death, including whether it was related to the weather. The family has been notified and the death is under investigation, the sheriff's office said in the late Saturday news release. Tens of thousands of people attending the Burning Man Festival were asked by organizers Saturday to conserve food, water, and fuel as they shelter in place in the Black Rock Desert after a heavy rainstorm pummeled the area, CNN previously reported. There is more rain forecast for the next few days, which could cause further delays and disruptions for participants attempting to leave the festival, as well as other operations within the festival. The Pershing County Sheriff's Office released that. When I first read that, I thought about Woodstock. You know, they had a similar issue of Woodstock. They had many, many thousands more than they anticipated, and the rains came and everything got all muddy and soggy and miserable. But a lot of people had enough drugs in them and alcohol that they still had a good time. So that's what I thought of when I read this. What do you think about that, Lamar?
Yeah. Black Red Rock Canyon is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And when I lived in Vegas, I would go hiking every other weekend. And so, this is my season. So when it rains, it really rains. And if you're there when it rains, you're looking at being in the mud.
Yeah. I hate
And
to be in that mess.
the West Coast the West Coast has suffered a lot, and there's a hurricane that just hit them. So they've really dealt with a lot of rain this season.
Yeah.
But Red Rock Canyon is such a beautiful place to hike.
I've never then been there. It sounds like a beautiful place. But I seen pictures on the news today in that mess, and it didn't look too beautiful. I'm sure it doesn't feel too beautiful.
It's such a beautiful
place.
Yeah.
Well, we got one more story.
Such a beautiful place.
One more story. Russia, according to Putin, Russia is absolutely invincible. The nation's strength is defined by the determination of its people. The president has said, adding that his country cannot be defeated. Russia has always been and remains absolutely invincible, President Vladimir Putin told a group of students at an open lesson marking the start of the academic year on Friday. The mentality of the Russian people makes it impossible for the country to be defeated by anyone yet. The president recalled the history of his own family, telling students about his ancestors who lived through World War II. According to Putin, his grandmother was fatally shot by a Nazi soldier, but even as she was dying, she was still thinking about her husband and told Putin's grandfather not to cry in order not to upset her in her final moments. Do you understand the depth of these relationships between the ordinary people? It's love, the president said, adding that even in the face of death, his grandmother was caring for her loved ones. How can we not take that well model? He added. Putin also said that all members of his family have felt deep respect for each other and had a strong inner culture. So, two questions. Do you think Russia is invincible? And do you think that Putin really believes that himself? What do you think, Angel?
I don't know my full thoughts on this one. I mean, I don't like Putin. I don't like, what he stands for and how he treats his people for sure. Um, as far as him being invincible, I believe he believes that. Whether there be some somehow he could be, taken control of, I'm not sure. I'm not sure because he seems to be a pretty powerful man. I guess if we stepped in, ooh, what would come after that probably wouldn't be very pretty.
Well, according to Ukraine, they're actually winning, but there's a lot of propaganda on both sides.
Yeah.
What do you think, Lamar? Is Russia invincible?
Oh, of course not. There's no country that's invincible, even us. Everybody has its flaws. It's just a way you go about it. We could lose just by China saying pay us. It all depends on how you go about it.
Right.
But we'd be done in a matter of an hour. But Putin is a politician, and he's doing a photo op. And how do you go ahead and what he's doing is trying to indoctrinate the next generation. Go to the children, and isn't that what Hitler did? And I'm not saying Hitler and you okay? Sorry, my dog's sneezing over here, choking. And I'm not saying that Hitler and Putin are the same. We know Trump and Hitler are the same. But anyway, but the idea is still the same, that you indoctrinate your children to carry on your policies. And as you're in power, that's your next level group to carry on what you're trying to do. So, and I don't see that Putin plans on giving up power anytime soon. So he's trying to indoctrinate the younger generation and saying, hey, we're number one. And he's literally, that's what we do with our children. Why we do not say the Pledge of Allegiance anymore, beyond me. I believe that we should, this is me personally as a veteran, but I think that right after high school or college, 2 weeks later, you should be in basic training. because in basic training, you learn respect for yourself, your family, and your country. And virtually every other country in the world does that, but the United States, and we clearly show our society is a bunch of entitled babies.
Yeah.
And that would literally solve the problem that only 1% of our population actually supports the military. But if we all supported the military, then we would have another great um, generation like we had with um, the baby boomers, when everybody was a part of the military because everybody had skin in the game, much like with what Israel does. You know, everybody is supported, everybody has skin in the game by supporting the military. And whether you accept what the government does is different than whether you're going to serve or not. Everybody serves. Everybody serves. You're a citizen of this nation. Whether you live here or not, you're coming home and you're going to serve.
And
we should do the
anytime you
same
hear
thing.
a politician speaking, they're always talking about, I am going to win, or we are going to win. You know, it's always trying to convince, I think, themselves just as much as everybody else that they are going to win. You know,
Right. Right. But Putin is basically trying, for me, Putin is trying to do a photo op and let people know that we're invincible because they're in a war that they're not winning. And there's a lot of citizens that are very much upset with him. And when they were basically calling up a draft, a lot of people left the country to not serve.
Yeah.
So what else do? You go to the children to try and indoctrinate them to say, I'm going to serve, much the same as with our children when 9/11 happened. A lot of people
Yeah.
jumped up and said, I'm going to serve. And, you know, that's what he's looking for.
Well, our history proves that wars actually do, well, not enforce, but kind of demand or at least command a lot of other people feeling more patriotic, you know, wanting to do something, join the military or wave the flags or something, you know. Like it was after 9/11, everybody came together, everybody was waving American flags. The Republicans and the Democrats were hugging each other in Congress on TV, and I remember thinking, well, boy, that won't last long. And it didn't. It didn't. But that's the way it is, right? That's the way it is.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Well, we have covered a lot of ground tonight. We have talked about a lot of things.
Yes.
Had some new faces. That was good. That was good to have Bobby and Dusty in here.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry about
It's
that.
always good to have you two in here. I do always appreciate y'all coming on. Enjoy talking to you and hearing what you have to say. So
Glad to be
I
here,
hope
Steve.
you enjoyed as
Glad
much
to
as
see
I
you. Joe.
Yes.
Well, you folks have a little bit of your weekend left, I get, or you're taking tomorrow off.
Yes, thank goodness.
Well, have a good Labor Day then, and hope to see you all soon.
Yes, thank you. Have a good night.
Yes.
Good night.
Enjoy the holiday. Bye bye.
Yes, you too. Bye bye.
Hey, I'm retired. It's always a holiday.
and say